The PT boats of the U.S. Navy were built by two companies. Each one had their own design. The Elko Company in Bayonne, New Jersey, and the Higgins Company of New Orleans, Louisiana. Elko was the builder of ocean-going performance boats. Higgins was most famous as the developer of shallow-draft spoonboats and the LCVP landing craft. You can see the lineage of each company in their respective designs. The Higgins boats were 2 feet shorter and had a boxier, purpose-built look. By contrast, the Elko boats more resembled an offshore racing boat. These differences provided plenty of material for the rivalries that existed between the crews of each boat. In total, Higgins built 199 boats, and Elko built 375. Although the first 49 Elko boats were of an earlier 77-foot design. And these were the first PTs to see service in World War II during action at Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, and the early stages of the Guadalcanal campaign. The iconic PT of World War II was the 80-foot Elko, and it returned to prominence among the American public in 1960 with the election of John Kennedy. To capitalize on the interest in the story of PT-109, Revell issued an early 80-foot Elko in 72nd scale. Up to that time, plastic modelers had very few options for a PT boat. The ancient Lindbergh kit that actually started life as a solid wood model, and the Rebelle Higgins Kit. The Higgins Kit was actually the first PT boat designed from the outset as a plastic model. The new PT-109 kit was an instant success, and it still remains in production today. Overall, it isn't a bad kit, with the only real misstep being the exaggerated planking of the deck. In 1978, Lindbergh issued a 32nd scale kit of PT-109. This kit was aimed more for the radio control market, and it can be most kindly described as a caricature. So realistically speaking, we didn't see another scale plastic model kit until 2006, when Italeri finally released their 35th scale late production Elko. It was followed in 2012 by the usual early production PT-109. There have been announcements of a 35th scale Higgins boat, but as of now there's been no additional news. Merritt released a 48th scale late production Elko in 2014. They followed it a year later with an early production boat. These kits have been reissued under a Trumpeter off-brand. Revell got back in the game in 2018 with a newly tooled PT-109 in 72nd scale. This was followed a year later with a late production Elko. Other than being the same subject in scale, these kits bear no resemblance to the original 1960s kit. But since both PT-109 kits are still on the shelves, there seems to be a fair amount of confusion as to which kit an unsuspecting modeler is purchasing. The current boxing of the newer Revell PT-109 kit now sports the U.S. Navy hologram with an individual kit number. So today, if you're looking to build a nice model of an Elko PT boat, you're in luck. Now you just have to decide what you want. How big do you want to go? How much detail do you want to crank on? It's easy to get all jazzed when you see a beautiful 35th scale model, like this model by Stu Hurley. But do you really think you can stick with it? How much space do you have? How big could it actually be? After all, they call them mosquito boats. And all the boxes look the same size on the internet. Well, let's take a look. So here's the Revell kit. Here's the Merritt kit. And here's the Italeri kit. Now the size of the box can be important because sometimes we don't get around to building these things right away.
Oh, really?
Here's how the three hulls stack up against each other. To put it in a better perspective, let's see how each one sits on a 10 by 24 inch bookshelf. Well, the Revell model leaves you a bit of room for a few books. The Merit Kit looks like it needs the entire shelf. In the Italeri model, well, it needs a bigger bookcase. But another thing to consider when deciding on how big to go is the viewing distance. To see a large model in its entirety, you'll need to stand back a ways. At a normal 18-inch distance, you wouldn't be able to see the entire Italeri model without moving your eyes. Moving into a foot away, and you're basically looking at a diorama. And this brings up another point about any model. Is there enough stuff of interest on the model to even make it worth looking that close? An early PT had a pretty Spartan deck, with not much to look at, unlike the later boats that were crammed with anything the crews could scrounge up. To me, these sorts of considerations are good to think about whenever I'm planning a one-off display model. There are pros and cons to each of these kits, but for the ease of construction, without a doubt, the Merit Kit wins hands down. The parts fit is good, and it's generally kept simple, like molding the chart house and the day cabin in one piece. And when you see this, it sort of leaves you scratching your head about the design of the Revell kits. For me, building any model usually involves a fair amount of research. A good part of it's technical, about the actual bits and pieces. But as much as anything, I find the history most fascinating. With regard to PT boats, I haven't found any books that cover the structural details very well. Most have little or no textural material. Probably the simple David Doyle's PT Boats in Action is as good as anything for a picture book. Rather, I would strongly suggest that you explore the resources on the PT Forum Board. They have a large library of downloadable material that will provide you with far more technical information than you can ever find in any of the current books. From the historical aspect, I highly recommend At Close Quarters by Captain Robert Bulkley. He takes you through the development of the PT boat, how its use evolved, life in the PT service, as well as their final disposal. There are a number of appendices with a wealth of specific information about each boat and each PT squadron. If you really want to understand the PT boat service, it'll be well worth it to you to spend time with this book. So if you've been thinking about building a PT boat model, now's a good time to get started.